Friday night at 8:30.
Good evening. Executive Councillor Fanny Law has come under fire for suggesting that pan-Democrat lawmakers Ronnie Tong and Dennis Kwok could run for chief executive in 2017. The pair have criticized the remarks as hurtful, and the Day reports.
Fanny Law, an executive councillor and a former top aide to Chief Executive Raymond Yeung, openly named pan-democratic lawmakers Ronnie Tong and Dennis Kwok as possible candidates for the city's top job during a radio program this morning. She said pan-democrats also should be able to run in the chief executive race if they engage in talks with Beijing. Law said since the two pan-democrats, Tong and Kwok, were willing to engage in dialogue with Beijing to build mutual trust, they have a good chance of becoming chief executive candidates in future. Law was referring to the biannual visit last week to Beijing by the Bar Association, in which Tong and Kwok also participated. During the visit, they met top officials in charge of Hong Kong affairs. Law's remarks have drawn sharp criticism from the two lawmakers. Tong said Law has put him under attack from supporters of the pan-democratic camp.
I hope that Mrs. Law is saying something in jest because I can see no factual basis as to what she said. In particular, I would like to remind her that to run for the chief executive is a very serious issue. He should not joke about it. By saying something like that in public would draw more attacks on me and would be most unfair.
Tong also warned that Law must speak with caution on such serious matters.
Because what she is saying is that anybody who can go up to Beijing would automatically become a possible candidate for chief executive. And that, I think, would have a very divisive effect on the pan-democrats as to who would like to go to Beijing to see officials and who would not like to go to Beijing to meet with officials.
Kwok, in the meantime, said what Law suggested today only confirmed that under the government's political reform package, the chief executive election would be a political screening ruled by men and not by law.
I would say that they really has demonstrated that this so-called nomination procedure is just a pre-selection mechanism, somehow using some hidden categories, using some political criteria to filter out people they don't like.
Kwok also said he found former Chief Executive Tong Chi-hua's comments yesterday that if pan-democrats chose to support the government's political reform proposal, they could also become CE hopefuls as hurtful.
I was really hurt by his comment because, you know, the Hong Kong people are really fighting for a fair, open and transparent election system. A system that accords with our core values. That is what the Hong Kong people is fighting for. Not some system whereby you have to understand some underlying, underlying rules, some underhanded method in getting the nomination.
The first suspect arrested in Hong Kong over last week's kidnapping in Sai Kung has appeared in court today. The case was adjourned without a plea being taken, with the defendant remanded in police custody. Our Barricula reports.
Zhang Qingwang was at the Kwun court this morning charged with kidnapping. He's one of 6 men accused of burgling a mansion in Sai Kung over a week ago, stealing $2 million in cash and valuables, and kidnapping a woman who was later released for a $28 million ransom. The victim was not identified for legal reasons. The crimes were carried out between the 25th and the 28th of April. Zhang was asked twice, through an interpreter, if he understood the charge, to which he said yes. No plea was taken, but the defendant reportedly requested that he be allowed to take a shower, which the prosecution said could be arranged. The case was adjourned to Monday for further investigations, as well as an identification parade. A citywide manhunt was launched last Tuesday for the 6 suspects, after the victim was released in exchange for the ransom. The 29-year-old from Guizhou was arrested on Sunday night as he tried to cross the Luowu border. The 5 other assailants are said to have been apprehended in Guangdong. Arthur Urquiola, ATV News.
ATV Executive Director Yip Ka-po said the broadcaster will not close down at the end of the month, as talks are still underway with potential investors. More than 500 staff will also receive their wages for April tomorrow.
ATV Executive Director Yip Ka-po met employees for the first time since the broadcaster was told by the government last month that it can only operate until April 2016. But there's a more pressing task. The company has yet to pay more than 500 employees their April salaries, and Yip said the problem is now solved.
We signed a contract with film company, and suddenly the money can't come in the right time. So we now push that they can pay us as soon as possible. So now we can promise the staff tomorrow we can pay the April salary.
Yip says he remains hopeful of ATV's future, even telling staff today that it will not close down at the end of this month, as speculated by some media.
There are suddenly a lot of newcomers, a lot of new investors contact us, showing that they are still interested to buy to invest in ATV. They are not only invest for 1 year, they want to last for the future.
He revealed that talks are underway with a group of potential buyers, although there is a minor delay.
They have exchanged the contract already, and the lawyer have come to our office to search for the financial statements and all the documents as well. So we hope that maybe in the first week of May, they will sign the contract. But up to the morning, they still haven't signed the contract.
He also confirmed reports that a consortium led by David Chiu, son of former ATV owner Deacon Chiu, is interested in inheriting staff from the station. Chiu announced last month that the company has submitted a bid for a free-to-air TV license, and it was later revealed that the billionaire had initially sought to buy out ATV, but a deal was not reached in the end.
Turning overseas, voters in the UK will go to the polls tomorrow in what is expected to be the tightest general election in decades. And a man has died in Peru during clashes between police and demonstrators, angry at a copper mining project. Arthur Urquiola reports.
Demonstrators say the man who was killed in southern Peru was hit by a police bullet. About 500 demonstrators clashed with police when they tried to block a highway. For over a month, the protesters have been opposing a $1.4 billion copper mining project, which they say will contaminate local agriculture. The latest death is the second in recent weeks. 2 weeks ago, a 61-year-old farmer was shot dead. Following that incident, police were ordered not to use lethal weapons, and law enforcement chiefs were replaced. Authorities say 140 officers have also been injured during the protests. The protests could delay the mining project's 2017 start. In Britain, people are gearing up to go to the polls tomorrow in what is expected to be the tightest general election in decades. Prime Minister David Cameron and the head of the opposition Labour Party, Ed Miliband, are neck and neck in the polls, with neither expected to secure a majority win. The Conservatives' current partners in the coalition government, the Liberal Democrats, have seen their support plummet, with their leader, Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg, in danger of losing his own seat.
In terms of the next government, the most likely at the moment is a Labour minority government at 2-1, and a Conservative minority at 3-1, and then a Conservative Lib Dem coalition at 4-1. But then in terms of the next Prime Minister, like I say, at the moment it really is a toss of a coin.
Clegg has warned that another election could be held before the end of the year if either of the two main parties try to rule as a minority government. A new book has been released criticizing U.S. presidential candidate Hillary Clinton and her family's finances. The book, Clinton Cash, suggests the former Secretary of State did favors for foreign governments and businesses, which gave her husband, ex-President Bill Clinton, speaking fees. Clinton, as expected, dismissed the attacks.
Well, we're back into the political season, and therefore we will be subjected to all kinds of distraction and attacks, and I'm ready for that. I know that that comes, unfortunately, with the territory. It is, I think, worth noting that the Republicans seem to be talking only about me. I don't know what they'd talk about if I weren't in the race, but I am in the race, and hopefully we'll get onto the issues, and I look forward to that.
The presidential candidate spoke to students at a high school in Nevada, calling for immigration reforms so undocumented immigrants had a clear path to citizenship. This was widely seen as an effort to court minority voters. She slammed a Republican proposal to grant undocumented immigrants legal residency but not citizenship, saying they were pushing second-class status. Arthur Urquiola, ATV News.
Police in Nepal came upon an unexpected surprise while searching in the earthquake-strewn rubble of a bank in Kathmandu. And 10 days after a 7.8 magnitude quake struck the country, the focus is now shifting from search and rescue to relief and recovery. Scott Murphy reports.
As police rescue teams were searching for possible victims underneath the destroyed bank in Kathmandu Monday, they came upon an unexpected treasure, 25 million Nepalese rupees in cash, the equivalent of over $246,000 US. After thoroughly counting it all, the money was then sealed in large metallic containers and carried away. 10 days after the 7.8 magnitude quake, the Himalayan nation has now asked foreign governments to conclude their search and rescue operations and move on to the next phase. The U.S. government, which has already sent a fleet of cargo planes, military personnel, and monetary aid to the devastated country, says it is thinking about the next steps.
What we're now looking at is, after the relief effort, we have recovery and we have reconstruction. We're looking at what can be done in conjunction with the other donors, very preliminary, on what can be done to help reconstruct the areas. And this is a long-term thing, but this has to be done carefully, thoughtfully, and if we try to do is make sure everything we do in the relief phase adds to that phase, and that's where we are right now.
To date, the earthquake has left over 7,500 people dead and over 14,000 injured. The United Nations claims that more than 2 million people will need some form of help over the next 3 months. Scott Murphy, ATV News.
Turning to sports and in tennis, the big names are gearing up for action in Madrid as 2 players have already booked their third-round tickets.